Coming up in this week's episode of TechSNAP, how many times have your online credentials been leaked? Do you think you're safe? I thought I was, but live in this episode, find out just how many times my usernames and passwords have been leaked online and what you can do to check for yourself. Plus, have you ever wondered how to build the ultimate spam protection? In this episode, we cover how you do a layered approach to spam protection and why you just might want to leave that USB thumb drive on the ground. All that and more in this week's episode of TechSNAP. Hi everyone, and welcome back to TechSNAP. It's our 11th episode, and it was it was recorded live June 30th, 2011. My name is Chris, and joining me on the Skype line, as always, is my co-host, Alan. Hey there, Alan.
Hey Chris, how are you?
I'm good, man. How are you doing?
Very good.
Very nice, sir. Now, you know we are quickly approaching episode 13, Alan.
Yes, and I just wanted to give everybody a bit of a sneak peek. So for next week, we're going to be talking about the future of cyber warfare in the special episode number 13.
Yeah.
So if you have any stories, suggestions, or questions relating to cyber warfare, make sure you send those in right away so that we can get everything put together for next week's show.
Yeah, we've got an epic show planned, and one great place to do it would be our TechSNAP Reddit page.
Yes,
which
that's
is
been
awesome.
Doing very well.
Yeah, you can get to it, link in the show notes, or you can go to links.techsnap.tv. Or the TechSNAP. Just go to, if you know Reddit, just go to the TechSNAP subreddit. And people have been submitting links now for a couple of weeks. It's rocking. This would be an awesome place to put your cyber warfare links in there because really, I'd like other people to vote on them and see what they think. And also, as we're getting this thing rolling, I wanted to give a shout out to a couple of Redditors on their TechSNAP page that I noticed were really kind of rocking it this week. And I wanted to say thanks, especially to Refuse to Speak. Not only did Refuse to Speak make it on the top page for a couple of his stories, but one of the stories in our show this week came from a link he submitted. And then also, I'm sorry if I'm getting this wrong, but Gavin, he submitted a link that it didn't make it in this week's episode, but I think a lot of you might be interested, so I put a link in the show notes, and it's great Dropbox alternatives for Linux. And that made it to the top page too, lots of votes, so I wanted to give a shout out to him. But I encourage anyone tuning in. Alan is a wizard with extensive show notes and documentation and reference links to everything we talk about. And we are also going to put in their credits to those who submitted them on Reddit as a thank you. So when we include stories in the show, I encourage you to go check to see who they are. I include a link to their profile, so maybe you figure you like the content they're submitting, you could friend them, and then you can see the other content they put on Reddit. And you can get a little more out of it than just the links we talk about. So it's a really cool deal.
If you email in a story, if you want to include a Twitter link or something, I'll put that in for stories sent in for email as well.
Yeah, if you email it to us, we could do your Twitter or a blog link or something like that.
Yeah, something.
Yeah, but dude, now really seriously though, we have a great show today. A ton. I put in the tweet out for the live stream tease. I said security took a beating this week, and we're going to give you the play-by-play you're not going to want to miss. And that's what this week's episode's all about. And then towards the end of this episode, we've got a great Q&A segment, including, Alan, it's something that I am really bad about in all of our shows. And people always often ask once they kind of start getting interested in the show after a little while, they kind of want to know how the hosts got to know each other. So we've got a couple of those, so we decided we're gonna answer that question, how Alan and I met and started working together. So that'll be in the Q&A section. And then for those of you who love Bitcoin, the good news is at the very end, I've got the Bitcoin Blaster segment. For those of you who don't, towards the end, you'll probably be able to tune out, but you're not going to want to because we're going to go into a little more detail about next week's episode. But Alan, with all of that junk out of the way, why don't we talk about our first story here where security took a beating, and it's one of these where it's a popular service too, so it's, of course, affecting a lot of users.
Yes.
It's Groupon here, and Groupon India, I should be specific, has lost 300,000 user passwords. They were, of course, somebody got the database, and the passwords were in clear text, weren't they, Alan?
Yes. So Groupon's subsidiary in India is called Soshashta, and somehow they ended up with a dump of their SQL database on their website somewhere, where Google managed to find it.
Oh, Google even indexed it.
Yes, and so even once they took it down, Google had it cached, so people could still read it. And so, therefore, copies of it got all over the place. And this included users' email addresses and their completely clear text password. So the first question is, why were the passwords ever stored in clear text? It's a big no-no. How have people not learned this by now?
I don't understand it, especially when it's things like it's a Groupon service, which you think of as a relatively modern thing. So you would think that the back-end system should be of some relative modernness. I mean, you would think at least it's not so old that it needs clear text.
Yeah, well, there's absolutely no excuse to have clear text ever.
Unless for some reason you want access to your users' accounts.
Hashing has existed for like 30 years. There's no excuse ever. Yeah. It's mostly just developers that don't think about security or don't care or whatever. And a great way to identify a service that's doing this, even when you can't see their database, is if they ever tell you your password, or when you do the password reset thing, it doesn't generate you a new password, just tells you what your old one is.
Yeah.
Then they stored your password in plain text or a reversible encryption, and either of those are bad. Right? You want a one-way hash that cannot be decrypted other than through brute force.
So now, Alan, do you know if there's truth to the story that the guy that found this was somebody who's setting up this side project called Should I Change My Password? And I guess he came across...
Yeah, so what he's doing is he's looking at all these databases that have been dumped, like the one from Sony or the one from here, Groupon, or all kinds of the Gawker one, all the different databases that have ended up being published. And he took all of those and he put them in a database, and you can type in your email address and search through it, and it'll list off any of your accounts that happen to have been caught in this.
Should I try it?
Sure.
All right, let's try it.
If it finds your email address in there, then it means that your password's probably been exposed and you want to change it.
Yeah, I have no idea. I've never checked. I think I've heard of this service, and I believe it's been looked into as it's supposed to be legit, not like it's stealing your stuff, right? So.
Well, because you're only giving it your username, not the password. So.
Oh right, yeah, of course.
So it's just your email address.
Yeah, unless. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna spin the wheel. Let's find out. I like they have a bulk check too. Oh, good.
Yeah,
okay. So here's what it says.
You have a bunch of email addresses.
It looks like your passwords may be safe. No instances of compromised records in this database.
Right, but for a lot of services, you probably use your Gmail address. Right?
Yeah. I'm gonna check that one too. Let's see. I'm gonna find out. I just didn't put that one. I didn't want to put that one on air.
Don't show your screen.
Yeah. Exactly. So it says here, and I wonder if I can show it now. Yeah, here we go. So here's what it says. Boy, this is no good. This is no good, Alan. It says your email, username, and password have been compromised at least 2 times. The most recent record occurrence is June 19th, 2011. You should change all your passwords.
Just a couple days ago.
Yeah. Wow. You should change all your passwords and put them in at least 10 characters with a combination gives you good password advice. So that's pretty heavy, I've got to tell you. Now, I, as a precautionary method, have been changing all of my passwords like a bad mofo right now. I'm like Shaq going through there and taking care of business with my passwords. Yep. So I've been on top of that. So I'm actually particularly not that worried about it, although I continue to. I have avoided this forever, and I'll be completely upfront. I'm only accomplishing this because of LastPass. And because of that, I've decided to become a premium subscriber, which, honestly, I don't know if anybody at LastPass watches TechSNAP. If you do, email us. But seriously, you guys have got to make your premium offering more competitive. I'm only doing it because I think you guys are great. And but it's the only way I've been able to manage this from going forward. But as soon as I started getting involved with Bitcoins, I decided I was going to get more serious about my security.
Right.
So wow. So I guess now I know I need to go change I need to stay on top of that. So anything else on this story?
Yep. Well, the first question it brings up for me is, does the North American version of Groupon also store your password in plain text?
Oh yeah. Is it just the same system, just different database?
Most likely the same software, right? And they just have a separate copy of the database for different areas. So most likely that means that they do.
I will take.
That's horrible.
This is going to sound awful, but I'm making myself a note, and maybe I could ask to outsource this because I don't know how to do this exactly. But if anybody out there would be willing to contact me with the press contact information for Groupon, I will email them and ask them that and try to follow up on that in the next TechSNAP. Because I think people deserve to know that. I think it's people's right to know that. So I mean, as these things go, as consumers, we are putting trust in these people to protect us. And
well, they should
be able to answer that question.
Yeah, they should. And it's one thing we talked about in a very early episode of TechSNAP when the French were proposing a law that would require website operators to be able to turn over the passwords of their users.
Right.
And Google and Facebook and eBay were all fighting this because they use hash passwords so that they can't, so that some rogue employee can't steal your password.
Right.
So that if their database is compromised, nobody can steal your password. And there's like 100 reasons why you should hash the password, and there are 0 reasons why you shouldn't hash the password.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not even performance reasons anymore. I mean, really.
No, it's just absolutely ridiculous.
Well, are they at least notifying people? Are they getting people?
Apparently, yes, and that's one thing I want to cover is how they're failing at that. But the first thing is how the researchers found the database. They just went into Google and searched for any file type SQL files that included the words password and Gmail. And they stumbled across this dump
pages and stuff. Pages and pages of stuff.
Yeah, and so they're finding all these databases, SQL files that have a field called password and contain people's email addresses.
Yeah, I mean, it says that they're like we were just blown away with how many results we found, and like this.
Yeah, so they found like 300,000 for Sashta, but that means they found all these other sites too.
Wow. Oh, Neen looks like Neen in the chat room here might have gotten me the. Oops, that's not the right shot. Looks like Neen here in the chat room might have gotten me the contact information for Groupon.
Awesome.
I love it. So I will save that link so maybe I can follow up on that after the show.
So once Sashta was notified about this issue where they had exposed all this user data, they started out sending emails to all their customers recommending that they change their password.
Okay.
That sounds like the right move, right?
Yeah.
But it's not. If you send an email to everybody asking them to change their password, first of all, half of them aren't going to. And second of all, between the time when this compromise happened and when everybody actually changes their password, their account can be compromised. Right?
Yeah.
If it takes me 2 days, if you send the email on a Friday and I don't check my email till Monday, during that whole weekend, everybody on the internet has my password and can log in and get my address, other information, and
not to mention 90% of people tune out when they see something from Groupon hit their inbox. They go, okay, whatever.
Exactly, that too. Maybe it goes in a folder and they only look at it later.
They need to go more like the Mt. Gox route where
everybody, exactly. You reset everybody's password and email them the password reset link.
Yep.
And therefore, you lock out every account until it has a new good password.
And really, it's in your best interest too as the company.
Yes.
Because you don't want somebody fraudulently using those user accounts. You don't want that either.
Exactly. And so they went about it all wrong.
Yeah, that's too bad. Any other thoughts on that one?
I added a link to that Should I Change My Password website, and so people can type in their email address and just see how many databases they happen to be in.
Good luck, everybody. Yeah, actually, I would love for people, if you get caught, or if you don't, leave a comment wherever you're watching this and let us know. That would be really cool. I especially if you get a lot. But don't lie. You got to be honest. Maybe people should include like a screenshot. If somebody gets a lot and if you get a lot and you're legit, take a screenshot of it and tweet it to me or email it in and to TechSNAP@jupiterbroadcasting.com, and I want to see that.
Yep.
All right. So do you want to talk about EA a little bit, Alan?
Sure. So 2 more game companies had their databases compromised. EA had the forums for BioWare's Neverwinter Nights.
Right.
So using what EA calls a highly sophisticated cyber attack, but could have been an SQL injection.
Which probably was.
You never know. They were unspecific.
It was really scary, Alan.
But anyway, they compromised the database, and they managed to get the usernames, password, email address, and birth date for all the users. Because it was the forum, they didn't have any credit card information or anything. But especially when it's official forum for a game, there's a very high chance that a good portion of those users use the same password for their game account.
Oh, of course.
Which probably does include their credit card information and so on.
Well, and again, the valuable information is never, for example, if somebody got somebody's Jupiter Colony form account, there's nothing of value likely in there. They could make them look stupid, but we could go in there and moderate it out. It's not a big deal.
Yep.
But the value isn't getting that password in the first place. That's where the value's at. Because once you have that password, you likely have the password to just about any other popular service you want to go try. And if you are a Gmail user, you've probably noticed that a lot of times after a large bunch of Gmail accounts get leaked or something like that, Google often makes you re-verify your account information because that's the first thing they go do is they go bang on every popular service out there.
And they start with the email, because if they get your email, they don't need the password for every other service. They can just use the password reset link.
Reset.
And like we talked about before, they won't always go in and change the password on your email and take it over, because you would notice that. If instead they go in there, they can do things like set up forwarding, so they get a copy of every email you get from now on without you noticing. Or Gmail has a feature for multiple user access where you can set up extra set of credentials that can also log into this email account.
Right.
They can do that. And this is what, when the Chinese hackers took out a bunch of U.S. government accounts, this is what they did. They didn't want to be noticed, so they set up so they would still have access without interrupting the user's regular access.
Mm-hmm. Of course. I mean,
Yep.
if what I'll do now, I'll say this. So for people that might not be familiar, one of the many tasks I've done over the years is for a short period of time, for about a year and a half, I worked as one of the lead on a bank, on a local Washington independent bank's network security. And so I worked a lot with very large-scale firewalls and commercial intrusion detection systems, a lot of open-source intrusion detections, well, just mostly Snort. But then from there on, I went into consulting, and I did the other end of it, where I did intrusion penetration testing, or from the inside internally. And so my job was, literally, I was hired to hack their systems, so that way I could tell them where they're vulnerable so they could fix them before somebody who they didn't want doing that did it. So it's the best job in the world to get if you have the tools and the knowledge. I mean, it is just an absolute thrill. And one of the things you do is you want to get in there and you don't want anyone to know you're in. Because if you can get in and not make a ruckus, then you can stay there and you can create accounts and you can watch for things. And you can watch for things more valuable. The best hackers are the patient hackers because they can just sit there and wait for something more valuable to come along, like an administrative login or some sort of bug or something to fire up on the network that's not password protected. Right.
So when you first break in, you don't go after the goodies right away. You look at escalating your privileges to get even more access.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, once you get in, that's just when the fun starts.
And that's pretty much, that's what's termed as an advanced persistent threat, right? It's not a threat you're breaking in and stealing something and getting out.
Right.
You're breaking in and systematically...
You're hanging out.
Escalating your privileges.
Yeah. Yeah, bit by bit, you're getting to next, each
more
like
more,
it's like a video game. You're leveling
you're
up.
getting more and more information and more data so that you can get access to more.
Well, a great way to accomplish something like that, Alan, is really where our next story takes us. Are you ready to jump?
Almost.
Okay.
So EA says no credit card information was stolen.
Oh, yeah, we should mention.
But they didn't say how many users were affected. But basically the entire forum's worth. I just don't know. They didn't say how many people that was. But at the day before that, Sega had their European Sega Pass website was also compromised.
Oh.
And 1.29 million customers had their data exposed.
Wow.
Again, including the username, password, email address, and birth date. But again, apparently no financial information was taken.
We apparently have a hacker in our midst. Big C in the chat room in the live stream over at jblive.tv says that he hacked his school's Minecraft server. The secondary follow-up observation there is that his school has a Minecraft server. That's pretty awesome. I like that.
It is kind of awesome.
Yeah. If you're a Minecraft player, head over to Jupiter Colony and check out. We have a discussion forum on that, and there's a Jupiter Broadcasting Minecraft server.
Yep.
Now are you ready to jump to the next story, Alan?
And then the last thing is that TechSNAP reminds you again, use a different password for every single service.
Yes.
We know that it's hard and it's a pain, but it's a lot easier than cleaning up behind having your identity stolen.
You guys, I feel you. I'm doing it. So if you guys want to go out there, you're doing it. I'll do it right along with you. I'm suffering right along with you. And the chat room was requesting maybe that in the future we'll spend some more time on LastPass. And I did it early on in TechSNAP, promise some time on YubiKey. And I just kind of been just waiting so that way you and I could sync up on that. Maybe like episode 14 or 15, we'll kind of do a big roundup on that stuff. What do you think? Does that sound cool?
It does.
Yeah, okay. All right, let's talk about our next story because I've been hinting at it here for a little bit, so I'm sure people want to hear about it. So one of the best ways, of course, to get into a network and begin escalating privileges is to get in at least at some level as a privileged user, even if it's just a desk user who has a generic account. At least you get at some point some access. And a great way to do that, of course, is by maybe putting a little code on some removable media. And of course, the U.S. government is aware of that, so they ran a little test against themselves. and the U.S. government planted USB sticks in high-security areas, and 60% of the government subjects took the bait. Is that about it, Alan? What do you think?
Well, basically what they did is they just dropped USB sticks on the floor and so on.
So
and of the people that picked them up, 60% of the people that picked them up plugged them into their computer.
Well, who wouldn't?
Right.
Would you?
Well, the first question is the security policy on the computers there preventing auto run from happening or not?
Yeah. Yeah, and, honestly, if you really wanted to, you could disable the USB and,
Well, specifically, after what happened with WikiLeaks, the U.S. government said it was going to be its policy to disable USB ports on all of its computers, or to disable external media, so that people couldn't take data out from secure systems.
Right.
Well, it works the other way, too. You don't want people bringing stuff in.
Bomber in the chat room points out that the one of the rumors on how Stuxnet got in and got going was from a USB media device. So we know that you can deliver serious payloads.
That was my third point of the story. You just stole
it. I'm sorry. I was trying to give Bomber credit. But Alan had already got it. Now, all right. Well, let's get back on track to the story. I won't step over any points. I'll let you reveal it. But this is... I just wanted to defend them in a bit. That's what I was really originally getting to, is I honestly think I'd pick it up too. But as a Linux user, I tend to be a little more, relaxed with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and right. It's like I would make sure that auto run wasn't enabled, and then I would maybe explore it properly, in an isolated system or whatever.
Right.
But that's because I'm a geek. Regular users plug it in to see what's on it. I don't know what they were hoping to find, but it's just curiosity.
You would think that the U.S. government, if they're likely, it sounds like from this article, using Windows, and Windows has a group policy system in place, you can actually prevent users from using removable media.
Exactly.
They have the tools.
They claimed that they were going to start doing that. But
we were going to start. Yeah.
Wow. And the more shocking statistic is, of the employees that plugged it in, 90% of those employees installed the software they found on the USB stick if it had an official-looking logo on it.
Oh, sure.
That was like just a Windows logo or just some official-looking logo, or if it was a U.S. government logo. But if there was an official-looking logo on the software, they would install it.
I can see that. It's like social engineering a little bit.
Yeah, so these users aren't necessarily even looking for, signed installers that prove that it's from a valid company, right? That since like Windows XP even, when you go to run an exe, it's like, are you sure you want to run this? And it was signed by nobody or by Microsoft or by this manufacturer, right? We have code signing, right? We're doing cryptographic signatures to say this is actually a reputable exe from this company. It doesn't seem they were looking for that. They were just looking for, a logo.
Because it looked legit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well.
And it's hard.
That's end users, man. There's no way around that. You've got to build around it.
In a lot of cases, the computers are more secure than users. So if you're going to target something, you target the users.
Right.
Whether that's just social engineering, getting them to do something for you, or if it's, in this case, getting them to run your software.
Right?
And that's how the advanced persistent threat against RSA worked, right? They sent a spreadsheet with an embedded flash 0-day in it.
Yep.
So that when
somebody double-clicked it,
opens up the spreadsheet, their computer is now in the hands of somebody else.
Yeah. Somebody had to double-click it. It was too shiny.
Yep. And specifically, like I got my thunder stolen a minute ago here, it's reminiscent of the Stuxnet worm.
Right.
Targeted isolated computers which weren't on the internet. So the only way to get the data in there was with some removable media. And so they had, hardware with that infected payload on it, got in there and made a havoc.
I don't understand. I know we just covered it, but I just don't understand why they just don't take the precautions to prevent this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, and specifically, Stuxnet was made up using a large number of 0-day exploits.
I believe it's like 20 of them.
It's something, yeah,
which is like insane. Like that thing deserves a Guinness World Record.
Yeah, well, honestly, the people who made it deserve a slap in the face for not reporting the vulnerabilities, but that wasn't their job.
Yeah, or they were handed the vulnerabilities from the manufacturer of the software. Just some people say.
Not usually, because that would be...
I'm just saying, in this case, some people say.
Because Stuxnet specifically targeted the Siemens command and control system.
Right.
It wasn't a flash exploit.
It seems more like they had access to somebody's Bugzilla database and then just cherry-picked the ones to get the job done.
Entirely possible. Especially, again, if it's command and control machinery that's not online, there's no update process for it.
Right.
It's like, this machine's not online. It doesn't matter if it's exploitable because it's in a locked room.
Right. Yeah.
Well, if you can, the way spy agencies work, they get an agent who maybe works in the factory and can walk into that room. And then,
Well, and the other thing is more and more now things aren't remaining, things are being connected, like...
Yes, exactly.
You look at, I was looking at all these different options for server monitoring, and there's all of these things now have like iPhone apps, so that way you can check on the status of your server from your iPhone on the go and things like that. And it's like all of these things now require that, you are always connected, and your systems that you're monitoring are always connected. Exactly. And a lot of times, they're now sharing data with other systems. It's just like that standalone control server doesn't appear to even exist in nuclear systems anymore.
Right. It means there's some system that's bridging the gap between the internal systems and the external one.
Yeah.
So there's some monitoring system, which a lot of people maybe not are so great about keeping all the updates on it, right? It's not a critical system. It's just the monitoring server.
Right.
Nobody's going to attack it.
Right.
But it's this bridge, it's allowed through the firewall on every internal machine, right? Yeah. So it can monitor it.
And because it's
exposed to the internet.
Because it's a pain in the butt, it probably has an SSH key, so it can just log right in without a password, so it can retrieve the stats it needs.
It's actually the juiciest target of all.
Yeah, it always is. Yeah. Because it's got it's in all the exclusions. It's in exactly.
Yeah, it's a low profile server. Yep. It's allowed through to everything. It has keys for everything.
It's
Exactly.
All right. Any other points before we jump?
Nope. I think that's about it.
Actually, this next one kind of fits right in with talking about iPhones. So,
but I just wanted to say about Stuxnet and so on. We're going to be talking about cyber warfare next week. So send in everything you have.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little. We're going to
as soon as possible, because if you're going to Wednesday, I'm not going to have time.
Send it in as soon as possible. That way we don't have to cram it on the last second. Stuxnet is going to provide a lot of ground for our conversation tomorrow. So if you're interested in that, we want to hear from you.
And in the show notes, there's a link to a short video about it, and it kind of explains how it works.
Yep.
The terminology is a little off, mostly because the guy that made the video is obviously a graphics person, not a security person. But
it's a great video, though.
It's not correct or anything.
It's just it's an infographic video, and sometimes that sounds a little debaggy, but it's actually a really good one.
It was really good, yes.
Yeah. Okay, now let's talk about iPhones, because iPhones and smartphones in general just have everything on them these days. And, of course, everybody, this is one of these stories you read out there, like myself here. You think you're really super clever until you realize that, like, everybody in the world does the same thing you do. Of course, I don't do these ones, but, Alan, this is kind of funny. Did you have any kind of insights or thoughts on these common passwords?
Well, the first thing is that 15% or 1 in 7 iPhones can be unlocked in fewer than 10 tries just by trying these common PIN codes.
And that number 10 is important because that's the iPhone security saying that after 10 unsuccessful attempts, you can have it wipe the device. So if you get in before 10, you get in.
Yeah, and if you in 1 in 7, you can get in. And you can greatly increase your odds if you know even just a little bit of information about the user. Some things like the most common first character in the PIN number is 1.
Yeah.
So right there, you've now eliminated your key space from 10,000 possibilities to 1,000. And then your most common second character is 2, and so on. But also, each value between 1980 and 2000 makes up 20 of the top 100 PIN codes. So if you can guesstimate the age of the person who owns the iPhone, or if you know their birthday, then you can use that to break into the phone.
Wow.
You'd be surprised how many people use their birthday.
I was surprised how many people use 1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, yeah.
I have a number that I just there's no significance to it at all.
Exactly. That's what all 8 of my PIN codes are.
Yeah. Yeah, well, this is a great post, though. If you guys are interested in reading this, he's got some great visuals.
Yeah, he does. Like a heat map of the touchpad. You can see that 4 and 7 are the least commonly used digits, except for the 4th because of the number of people that use 1, 2, 3, 4. But using that information and a little bit of information about the user, you can really increase your chances from 10,000 down to a lot.
I think I just recently shared the story that I can generally, depending on the sophistication of the user, I'm trying to put that nicely, if you get my drift, I can generally walk in and a lot of times guess their password. I'm not trying to boast, but a lot of times there's just visual cues in somebody's office that will give away what their password is.
Exactly.
If they're not thinking before they do that. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. It's a great link, and I guess I didn't quite follow it, but I guess he got in trouble he got his app kicked from the App Store.
Yeah, he the way he got this data is he has an app for security cameras or something, and he has a PIN code system on it, and that's where he got this data from. Because he was also guessing that a large portion of people use the same PIN code on his app as they do on their actual iPhone.
Oh.
But anyway, because he was using this data, Apple kicked him out of the iPhone store.
Well, yeah, because he's storing people's codes.
Yeah, but they're codes for his app.
I guess so, but still.
He didn't have access to the actual phone code.
I guess that's kind of a big assumption to assume it would be the same
PIN. The violation there was that his PIN code enter screen looked exactly like the iPhone one or something. But Apple can do it for whatever reason. They don't need a reason to do it. They can just be like, it's Tuesday.
Oh, is this his? Oh, okay. Well, yeah. I mean, that's debatable. Okay.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
Yeah, it is hard to say.
Other things that they noticed were a lot of people use some kind of pattern to their PIN code, whether it's repeating digits or patterns or whatever, such as like 2222. Right? If you know the first digit of somebody's PIN code, if you manage to shoulder surf and see what the first digit is, first thing to try is that thing 4 times.
Right.
Or things like 1212 or whatever, or lines drawn across the screen, like 2580 or the inverse 0852, or doing a circle in the corner like 1241, and things like that. A lot of those simple patterns are what people use, and that's why, for example, on Android phones, they don't even have the numbers. Right? You just draw a shape.
Yep, and you can, though the problem with that is you can generally tell by the grease pattern the person's thing.
Yeah, and the same thing for a PIN code.
But here's the problem with the swipe thing, and I swear to God, this is true on all of my Android devices, and this is disgusting. I apologize, people, but the grease starts thicker and then thins out, so you can actually kind of visibly see it fade out, so you can guess what you can actually see the thing. I keep all my phones clean. I'm always doing the shirt wipe thing, but
I bought this little thing at ThinkGeek. It's a little it's on your belt or your keychain.
Yeah, it's like
it's got a little
microfiber thing
cloth.
or something.
Yeah, microfiber cloth to clean your glasses and your phone. Great thing to keep around.
Nice.
But the issue I have with that system is that when you're at, say, the point where 1 would normally be, your only choices are 2, 4, or 5. You can't do 1 and then go down to the next corner without connecting the line. So even if you make it longer, you're still eliminating a number of the possibilities.
Right.
As opposed to actually having a number pad.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there was just a study recently that did say that for some reason, probably you remember why, but the number pad is considered more likely to be secure, and Google said I think they're going to add the number pad.
Yeah.
So
but the main thing
options
is that
are nice.
the Google thing allows you to have more than 4 points.
Yep.
Whereas most phones only allow you a 4-digit code.
It actually seems primitive for these devices that have so many sensors and so much information. It seems almost kind of weird that it needs that at all. Although I guess Apple has a patent for a device that can identify its user by like heartbeat and other external factors. Like it can pull like all kinds of sensor information on latitude and sound and all kinds of stuff. And it's nothing they have in production, but I guess they have it patented.
Yep. Another popular value was 5683, which when you look at it, doesn't seem to match any pattern. And it's like, why is that so popular? And it doesn't really seem to fit until you realize that it spells love with your standard phone number, letter substitution things. And
bunch of softies.
Yeah, and so again, if you can tell, if you know whether or not the person whose phone you're trying to break into is in a relationship or not, you can. It reduces the number of possible passwords, or increases your chance of being able to break in.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So if you know the user's birthday, the relationship status, if you can shoulder surf and see even just the general shape of their pin code or the pattern or where it starts or where it ends, you can just chop out the number of possibilities.
I don't have my phone in the studio, but Big C in the chat room says that you can already do the number pad on Android if you want now. Mm-hmm. I've never tried.
Yeah, but if you can just get one digit out of somebody's pin code, you've just chopped the key space down from 10,000 to 1,000 with the 3 digits. And then, if that eliminates a bunch of combinations, or if you know for sure that the second digit is 9, first thing to guess would be their birthday, right? The year.
Yep.
And things like that.
Man.
And, all your regular attacks, like if it's your mom's phone, try birth dates of people in the family or whatever, and it's so predictable that it's really bad.
Huh. Yeah, the chat room says, and Iron Helix in the chat room says his Evo has a 10-key lock screen. And I've also seen some replacement screens that do some fancy stuff too. You'd think maybe like they could do some sort of combo of voice pattern recognition too.
Possibly, yeah.
And and they all have front-facing cameras too. Maybe you could do like voice and face or something. You could be like, unlock my S, and it would take a picture and then compare the two. Anyways.
Right, but then you have to worry about the chance it'll fail, and if it takes you 3 tries to get in your phone all the time, it gets really annoying. And
format my phone once a day, kind of a thing. Yeah. From 10 failed. Yeah. All
right. So again, it comes back to the thing we've been talking about for weeks now, is that users tend to reuse their passwords.
Yeah, which we see here, and we see.
Yeah, but especially when, again, if your phone password is the same as your ATM password, that's a really bad plan. Right? But even it could be other things, like your voicemail, again, is a PIN number, right?
Yep.
And if it's the same as your phone, then they just broke in your phone and they broke into your voicemail.
And your ATM, yeah, boy.
Yep, and all kinds of other things.
Yeah.
It depends. Myself, one of my banks allows me a 6-digit PIN code instead of 4, but the other one's only 4.
I wish.
And, 4 digits is really not strong enough anymore.
I wish these things, what would be great? I don't want fingerprints. I don't want retina scan. I don't want to give blood. But I wouldn't mind like a urine sample. Like if they could make it sterile, I could generally always take a leak, or just a little. Seems like a win-win. I'm accomplishing something. They're getting a pretty good, solid,
If you're standing at the ATM, do you want to use the ATM somebody else just used?
Hey man, no, I preface it. It needs to be sterile. It needs to be clean. I'm just saying.
Right.
I'm just saying. I know everybody goes to the thumb and to the retina when you go with bio authentication, but I just wanted to put that out there. Maybe we could just start the conversation out there in the technology sphere.
That works at Briggs and has to clean and reload the ATM.
Yeah, but maybe it'd be a new economy, right? I mean, everybody needs a job.
Yep.
Yeah. Hey, anything else on this story, on?
No, that's pretty much it.
All right, man. Well, you know what that means. It's time to jump into the TechSNAP feedback. And welcome to TechSNAP's feedback. Now, of course, we always want to hear you in any way you want to contact the show. And we've got a couple of questions we're going to put in this week's episode. Alan, are you ready for the first one, sir?
Sure.
All right. First one comes from Bob. He says, how did Alan and Chris meet? Alan?
That's a good question.
It is a good question.
It's been asked a couple times, and I thought we'd finally get around to covering it.
Yeah.
I guess the first time we met was April 2009 when you moved the chat for Jupiter Broadcasting over to our IRC server.
Yeah, from WildRad.
Over at geekshed.net. And we kind of, just hung out.
That was really, Alan, when we were just starting to get live, and so we needed an IRC room. And the Wide IRC guys had this weird breakup that it was drama. Yeah. So we moved.
But specifically, we host the live things for a number of different places, including CNET. Their live stuff is all with us as well.
Perillo too, right?
Yeah, and Perillo and Lord Cad and a bunch of other people. And so we're kind of geared towards that, and so we were able to help you out.
Yeah,
and
great.
And I kind of just hung out and watched the Linux Action Show every once in a while, but
even though
there wasn't all that much to it. Yeah, and then January of last year, 2010, I was randomly lurking on IRC, and I noticed that the Jupiter Broadcasting room was just right full of people. It's like, wow, they haven't had that many people in there in quite a while, especially on not a Sunday.
Yeah, and, for last when we do Sunday.
Yeah, and I peek in, and Jeremy's like, what's the name of Captain Archer's dog? And I'm like, Porthos. And like, you win. I was like, I win? What?
Was it really that random, that quick?
Yeah, I literally didn't know there was a contest going on. I just saw Jeremy ask a question. I didn't know who Jeremy was. I answered the question, and he's like, you win. I'm like, that's awesome. What do I win?
And then you could and so
it was a closed beta invite for Star Trek Online,
which worked out great because now you're a huge member of Jupiter Force. And
yes, I love Star Trek, and I had heard vaguely about Star Trek coming out as a game, but it was the perpetual version. I had no idea about the cryptic version, and so when I won, I was like ecstatic, and So then we built the fleet, and then it was like, oh well, here I'll donate TeamSpeak because I have servers and TeamSpeak.
And we needed TeamSpeak for the Stowe fleet.
Yep, and so that started, and we were doing good, and then as open beta was about to start, JupiterColony.com was ridiculously busy.
Yeah, we were getting a ton of traffic.
Yeah, because everybody wanted to know about open beta, and your web host suspended your site. Yeah,
I needed hosting. I needed hosting real bad, and I needed hosting that would handle a lot of traffic.
Exactly. And the first thing was they're like, well, we can give you a dedicated server for like $250 a month, but we can't help you move your site or anything. Yeah. And I was like, what? Yeah,
when they canceled it, they deleted it immediately. In fact, I had to contact them and get a backup.
Yeah, they locked you out of the control panel and everything.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, we managed to get them to let you back into the control panel, and we copied everything over to my server, and we had you back up in 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah, it was rocking.
Yeah, and because of the way Scale Engine works, you had slightly bigger bill for that month while it was busy, but then when traffic went back to normal, your bill went back down.
Yep.
And it has worked out very well.
Yeah.
And then, as things get further along, eventually we moved all your sites over.
Yeah. Funny how it just kind of happens like that, huh?
And I guess at one point, Brian was going to be away from the Linux Action Show, and you decided you want to talk about BSD, and you asked me if I could.
Yeah, the timing was perfect. It was like we were going to do our Brothers in Arms episodes. We were going to talk about BSD, and I think Brian's wife had her baby, and so he took a couple of weeks off.
Right, and so you asked me, and so I stepped in, and
it was great.
Did 2 or 3 episodes of, and I think one episode I just sent in a video that you played, and that was that. And then after that, we decided that worked out so well and people liked it, so we should try our own show.
We should do TechSNAP because we know we both had common interests. And we both have, we share an IT systems administration background and a long history in the computer industry. So we both have a lot to draw from there. It was a good fit.
And it was a different topic than what was covered under last. And so
it
seems to be working out pretty good.
Yeah. All right. Well, should we move on to the next question?
Yep.
All right. So Leon sent this one in, and he said, how do you handle spam filtering on your servers? I'll let you go first on this one, and then I'll throw in some tidbits because you mostly echo how I handle mine, actually.
Yeah. So what we for my web hosting customers, what we do is we have four outward-facing mail servers with our MX records spread across them, and so the mail comes into those, and those run Spam Assassin, but not in the regular way. They run it at mail time. So when the remote server connects and sends the mail to us, we scan it right away before we send an before we finish the transaction, so that if the spam score is really high, we say that user doesn't exist here.
That way it doesn't register with them that it's a good account.
Right, and specifically, the regular way to do it with Spam Assassin would be to accept the mail and then scan it out of band, because it's easier on your processor and so on.
Right.
And then if it's bad, you send a bounce notice. The problem is a lot of spam comes in with faked from addresses. So you end up sending bounce messages to people that didn't send you the original message, and you end up reflecting the spam and causing more spam.
Yep. And it confuses users like nothing else. I always get questions when that happens, and then it's a very complicated thing to explain to them.
And specifically, you end up getting mail bomb like that. You get like 10,000 bounce messages because somebody used your address as the from address on a spam.
Yeah.
So we scan it right at mail time there. And then we also do gray listings. So if the spam score isn't high enough for us to say this is definitely spam, we give a temporary error, and then a real email server will try again in 10 minutes. But 90% of all spammers will just give up as soon as they get a temporary error.
Right.
Because they don't want to waste time. They want to just hit everybody who's easy.
Speed is key.
Yeah. And so that eliminates that. So then these 4 mail servers buffer up the mail. Specifically, there's 4 so that even if 2 of them are down or whatever, we can still receive mail. Even though that almost never happens.
Of course not, Alan.
But email's critical, so we make sure we have more than just one backup server.
Yeah. That's definitely one of the number one trends in corporations that I've noticed over the last 12, 13 years is the trend from email being this thing they have to email being one of the absolutely most critical pieces of infrastructure that they have.
Downtime on your mail.
Yep.
And so that usually means you should have a more than one backup mail server, and one of those should be offsite at least.
I had law firm clients that would have multi-million-dollar contracts for, like, they were the lawyer in the part of the transaction. They'd be like going over the docs with multi-millions of dollars on the line, and they would be coming in with PDFs over email. I mean, and so if email went down, there was literally millions of dollars on the line.
Exactly. And so once the mail gets through that into these 4 outlying servers, then it's forwarded to the actual mailbox server where the customers have accounts. And there, Spam Assassin runs normally. So after the mail's received, it goes through Spam Assassin, and then each user has their own settings, whether spam should be directed to a certain mailbox, or if it should have the subject prefixed, and whether or not it should be safed. So what they do is, when a spam comes in, instead of just attaching a header to the subject and putting it in the mailbox, it attaches it as an attachment to a message warning you about the spam, and it explains why this message is determined to be spam. And so that way, if the email contains some kind of exploit against Outlook with the pre-contain, it's wrapped up in an attachment that you have to explicitly open, so it doesn't happen automatically by accident.
And the reason why you don't completely remove it is it's not always 100% necessarily correct that identified as bogus, right? I mean, so you want to keep it just in case.
Why only really, really, really high values of spam do we reject outright.
And that high value comes from a combination of what the scanner detected, who the sender is, and what its rating is, and all these multi-factors that go into this overall score.
Right, because you don't want to base it on any one factor. You want... Yeah. Usually, spam that's identified has at least 8 separate factors.
And if you look, I wonder if I can show. If you look at your email headers, a lot of times your whoever is doing your spam filtering will inject into the header what the spam score was, so that way your local client can make decisions too.
Exactly.
I'll see. I wonder if
the same thing. Yeah, ours has that. Yeah. And so users can adjust their settings on how sensitive they want to be, and what should go to the spam folder and what should come to their actual inbox, and so on.
Yeah.
And so that's how we do it for there. So the main thing is that Spam Assassin, especially on larger emails, is doing a lot of work, and so we spread it out across 4 whole servers. And we take most of that load off the server that actually has their mailboxes on it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. That way you're not slowing down the mail processing itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just checking my headers here to see if they do have put there. I don't see it on this one.
A sneaky trick that a lot of spammers have been using is to not take the highest preference mail server.
Oh.
Right? According to the RFC, you're supposed to get the DNS entry, get the list of mail servers, and then try them in that order. But some spammers will automatically try the lowest priority or one of the lower ones, because those sometimes don't have any spam protection. They literally will accept anything, because they're the backup MX, right?
Oh, yeah.
So they don't know what accounts exist or what are the spam rules. They'll just accept everything and then forward it to the main server once it's back up, which if it's not down, they'll forward it right away.
I never thought of that. I suppose somebody might set it up like that. That'd be kind of the setup. That's the bad of the setup, though. I mean, that's a bad setup, really.
Right, but it's hard to, on your backup MX, it's hard to know what users exist, right? On my system, it doesn't know what users exist. That's why it does what it can to filter it out, and then some of the work still has to be done on the main mail server. Okay. But specifically, most things like Spam Assassin will say, hey, this mail came in through a trusted host, right, one of our backup MXs, so it's exempt from the spam filter.
Aha. Right.
So you have to set up, Spam Assassin has 2 separate settings. One for hosts that shouldn't be subject to the spam filter, and one that are for your backup MXs that is treated slightly differently.
So maybe it has like a certain level of trust, but it still gets a passover kind of a thing?
Right. Like it'll say, we'll trust the spam headers that server are fixed, but we won't exempt them from the spam filtering and things like that.
How would you suggest somebody gets familiarize themselves with Spam Assassin?
They have really good documentation because it's an Apache-backed project.
So just, go there. Okay, so you say use their official documentation, because I think, I can't remember even how I got involved with it originally. Must have been some enterprise distro that had the packages, and so I loaded up and then got sort of sucked in that way.
I use a package for BSD called SA spam-xm-sa, because you do spam assassin before, where you reject the mail if it's really high score. Then it goes through XM, and then it goes to regular spam assassin, where you have the user rules.
Now, I'll be honest, and I don't know, Alan, do you offer like a hosted version of spam filtering for people?
No. Really.
There are services out there, and the one that I've used, it was still called Postini, but Postini got bought by Google. Now it's a Google service, and it's nice if if you're willing to spend some money, because it does the queuing, and it has been really. I'll say this, it's been really good. It's been really reliable, but there are fees associated with using it. If you're an organization, it's kind of nice. And like if you want to take your mail server down for the weekend, you can set this thing to queue the email, and then when you bring the server back up, it'll deliver them all for you. Or if you want to, what's really nice is you set all your DNS records to point to Postini, and then you can, if your ISP, if you need to change ISPs and change your IP, then you just go in the Postini dashboard and change the IP, and now mail starts going there. It's nice.
Yep.
And Postini is well respected within the email world, and so the spam ratings often from emails that are sent out, because you can also use Postini to send out, so that way you're kind of coming from like a trusted source, and your spam rating is generally considered a lot lower because you're coming through Postini as well. So it's a good service. I don't know. I have a hard time saying people should pay for spam filtering still, but it can be pretty bad.
Trying to remember.
Google Apps customers can use this too. It's part of Google Apps. You just got to go turn it on.
And there's one that Dvorak uses. He always claims I get no spam. I don't know if it's any good or not.
Yeah, I don't know either. So why don't we? That's it for the feedback. But you guys.
And in corporations, there are a lot of people use things like the Barracuda.
Yeah, Barracuda's brilliant. Yep.
And there's an open source one. Forget what it's called.
I bet like things like pfSense have spam assassin packages on them and things like that.
Yep. But the one I'm thinking of is a whole device thing. Used to be advertised on Leo Laporte's podcast.
Oh.
It's a firewall.
Yeah, it starts with an A. It starts with an
A.
Yeah.
That thing.
I know what you're talking about. Boy, that's going to bug me. Astaro.
Astaro, that's it.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's any good, but that's another option.
Yeah. All right. Now, should we get to the roundup?
Yep.
All right, so I'll take the first story. This is just quick stories that we thought were awesome, but to keep the show moving and going and not getting crazy long, we're just going to give you the headlines, but if you want to go check them out, links are in the show notes. And the first one is one that I've been drooling to talk about. It is Netflix shares insights on how their cloud infrastructure is designed. You can go read a blog post. They gave a
slideshow.
Yeah, a presentation, and the slides are there.
Slides, and it's quite detailed about how they transitioned from using their own data centers to using the Amazon cloud, because they couldn't build data centers fast enough for how fast they were growing.
Right. Yeah. Which is you got to imagine the story like Netflix with the crazy exploding growth they've had, plus the type of content they're delivering, has to be a nightmare scenario. All right, next story is yours, dude.
Netflix is also transitioning to high availability storage systems. So they're moving the last bits that used to be in their own data centers into the cloud. The stories have slightly different dates, and so it kind of doesn't make sense that they're both there at the same time. But
yeah, they're just ones that I've collected.
Yeah,
because I was tempted to do like a Netflix section, but it just it's pretty dry
quite
stuff
enough for it. But yeah, so in the first story, Netflix talks about they're moving everything except for this last bit of data into the cloud, and then they moved the last bit of data into the cloud too.
Yep, and they kind of talk about why. The second link is more about the rationale for using cloud database storage and things like that too.
Yep.
All right. Now, the next story in the roundup that you might want to go check out for a good afternoon read, especially if you're watching this like on a Saturday or something and it's raining. A massive indestructible botnet has been detected by researchers, which claims to have at least somewhere between 2 to 4 million active zombie machines. And so basically the network has reached such a size that they're like, how can we ever shut this thing down? Kind of an interesting problem.
It's self-sustaining, right? You can't take out the command and control servers because it's distributed.
It's massive.
And yeah,
it's a P2P botnet.
Basically, it's the same idea as Bitcoin, is there's no way to take it down.
It is. Yeah, it's a P2P. Yep. All right, so the next story is yours, dude.
Yeah, the Dropbox CEO started sending out emails saying that a lone hacker downloaded data from just less than 100 accounts.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like he's trying to downplay it, saying it was just a single hacker. He just got it from 100 accounts. No bigs. But
yeah, well, it was their fault that there was no password authentication for hours.
You know what? I'm going to save this last story in the roundup for next week. I'm taking it out. People are going to have to wait. Because next week, like we said, is our cyber warfare story, and we want to, our cyber warfare episode for Lucky 13, we want to get your guys' thoughts, so I'm going to save that one. All right, I'm going to jump into the Bitcoin blaster, Alan. For those of you who are Bitcoin fans and just getting into mining, and you're having some trouble with getting off the ground, I'll put links in the show notes to something called Linux Coin, and it's a live Linux boot CD that gets you up and going with the ATI drivers and the OpenCL SDK. And in fact, you can just open up a terminal and type start_mining or something like that, and it will it'll ask you a few questions, and in some cases just get you going right then and there. I've got it going now in 2 machines. And it's good. It also includes the ATI overdrive utility, so I can go in there and turn up fans, turn up voltage, turn down clock my memory, and overclock my CPU. I've got on a Linux box right now, I've got a 5830 running at stable at an 875 megahertz clock. I think at stock it was, I don't remember, 800. I think I've got it up to 925, but it got a little wonky. But see, what you can do is you can turn up the you can actually, with these, just in software, you don't have to like move any jumpers or anything like that. You can with sliders turn up the megahertz on your GPU and downclock the memory so it uses less power. So that way you don't have to increase voltage. So you're not increasing temperature, but you're getting more math per second.
Yep.
So Linux Coin gives you the tools to do that. It also includes the ability to write it to a USB thumb drive. So that way you can boot from a thumb drive, which actually leads me to this. The next piece I'm including in the show notes is I'm going to start a little project, and I have a link to a Newegg wish list for you guys, for yourselves. This isn't for me. I've already bought this stuff. But if you want to see what I bought, maybe get it for yourselves, I include the wish list so you can add it to your own cart directly, with the exception of I got a different video card, but this is an equivalent video card. It's just, a 700-watt power supply, 2 gigs of RAM, an 8-gigabyte flash drive to boot the Linux distro from. And here's the trick. Here's what I did, Alan, and I think this is maybe something people might want to consider. I'll tell you how it works because I ordered one of these. It's an Atom board. For $99, it includes the motherboard, a dual 1.66 gigahertz dual core Intel Atom, and a PCI Express slot. And the Atoms use so little power that
it's like 4 watts.
Yeah, that they don't even need a fan to cool them.
Yep.
So I'm going to take that, and I'm going to go rackless. And here's if you're watching the video version, I have a picture of my early Bitcoin farm stand. I'm going to, no case, motherboard's going to go on the rack with a power supply, and it's just going to go right there, minimal, almost like Google Data Center style. And these little Atom boards are little mini boards, so they don't take a lot of space. And I'm going to try it and see if I can build a little quiet, lower power mining system out of an Atom box. And so if you want to see the hardware I chose, links in the show notes for that. A couple other cool Bitcoin Blaster things just to get through really quick is there's an article about Bitcoin and how it's sort of stabilizing again, but also one that, Alan, you threw in there that my wife threw our way was somebody used Bitcoin to buy lunch. So
yes,
you can buy goods in real life now. And also a link in there, some background information on the MT Gox hack. Because more information's come out. They've sort of been honest about what's happened, and they've apologized for it, and the information about that is in the show notes as well.
Yep. Alan,
that's one heck of a TechSNAP. And episode 13 is just like, I'm already excited about it, and it's a week away.
Yep.
I want to do it right now. I'm so excited about it. But we'll have to tune in. Now, TechSNAP comes out every Friday over at jupiterbroadcasting.com. Try to get out in the mornings for you. And, in fact, if you subscribe to the RSS feeds, A, you get it automatically, and B, we have in just about every format you'd want it in. And then C, I usually try to put it in late Thursday night, so that way you have it in time for the commute, which is great, too, if any of you commuters want to go grab the audio version and listen while you drive. I try to get it out usually by 9, 10 o'clock Thursday Pacific time, so that way if you're in a different time zone, maybe it's available for you before you need to hit the road. So something to consider, and links to that, of course, are also in the show notes over at jupiterbroadcasting.com. And one last plug is we do shoot this show live at 1 p.m. Pacific over at jblive.tv on Thursdays. And we love it when you guys join us because we have an awesome chat room with some great, clever people in there, and we'd love for you to be one of them and give us feedback right as we record the show, especially next week. Give us your theories about total cyber warfare doom next week in the chat room live. That'd be a lot of fun. Yeah. And I guess one last plug, since we're here, we're plugging like a bunch of maniacs, is we do have the TechSNAP Facebook page over at facebook.com/TechSNAP if you'd like to join that, and we occasionally post some more behind-the-scenes-y TechSNAP specific stuff. Yep. So there you go. Alan, any other business before we sign out?
No, I think that's about it.
All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for watching this week's episode of TechSNAP, and we'll see you next week.